Good morning. I'm Jeff Berman, United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York.
I originally came to New York trying to be a model, and in my travels I met a girl named Tiffany.
Today, we announce the unsealing of sex trafficking charges against Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein is a billionaire friend of Donald Trump's that was responsible for throwing the sex parties.
The charges allege that Epstein sexually abused young girls by enticing them to engage in sex acts for money.
I did receive money to go to these parties. After every party, I was paid by Mr. Epstein.
The underage girls were initially recruited to provide Epstein with massages and often did so nude or partially nude.
He asked me to get down to my bra and just my panties, and I thought that was weird, but I mean, modeling, maybe it was something about my figure. And he asked that I give him a massage.
The girls were recruited in a variety of ways, usually by employees of Epstein and sometimes by fellow victims.
The first time that I met Donald Trump was at a party at Jeffrey Epstein's mansion. There was an orgy going on, and he was kind of watching off in the distance, and he basically asked if I could come over and give him a hand job. And at first I wasn't very comfortable with it. This was like my first party, and I didn't think that was my responsibility. But my recruiter told me that I needed to do it, so I agreed to. Gave him a hand job, and then immediately after, he had an orgasm, he left, and I didn't see him again at that party.
The victims, all underage girls at the time of the alleged conduct. This conduct, as alleged, went on for years.
Donald Trump knew that I was 13. Donald Trump had specifically asked about me because I remind him of his daughter, and she said, well, she's 13 as well. So he knew the first time that he saw me, but he took a liking to me because I looked like his daughter.
Preserving the innocence in children is one of the most important responsibilities we carry as adults. Purposely failing children in any way is not an option.
Second time that I saw Mr. Trump was same scenario. He was onlooking at an orgy, and Tiffany came over to me and said that Donald Trump had requested that I perform oral sex on him, and I'd never done something like that with anybody, so I was a little nervous. And then I performed oral sex on him, and once he was done, he hopped up, and that's the last I saw of him at that party. It's like, once he's done, he's out.
The alleged behavior shocks the conscience. And while the charged conduct is from a number of years ago, it is still profoundly important to the many alleged victims, now young women.
The last encounter that I had with Donald Trump, Tiffany approached me about a rape scene that was supposed to be played out, and I didn't like the sound of that at all. But Tiffany assured me that it wasn't going to be, if it was anything I wasn't comfortable with, we could stop. That she would be right there, and that it wouldn't get out of hand, and that it was a fantasy, like it wasn't really going to happen. So I told her that I would. Tiffany was always nice to me. I trusted her, else and I wouldn't always trusted her. She was there, and he came in, and I was basically tied to a bed with pantyhose, and he tied him. They were so tight, it hurt to even lay there, and I tried to say something, and it was like, you just, shut up, shut up, bitch. It was basically like he was being really, really rough, and I understand. It just didn't seem like a fantasy, and I started to get scared, and he was, basically ripping my clothes off, and I was actually I got freaked out. I told him that I didn't want to do this. I was So I screamed over for Tiffany, and she was like, "Mr. Trump, this is scaring her." And he's like, "Oh, you shut up too." He just turned into this animal. It was like a completely different person. It was like everyone in the room was scared of him. He ripped off all my clothes, and he started to basically have sex with me, and I was screaming because I'd never had sex before. It was my first time, and Tiffany was yelling at him too. She was saying I was a virgin, and he told us to just shut the fuck up, and just basically took my virginity while I was crying and telling him to stop, and that's basically begging for him to just stop. And Tiffany didn't know what else to do either. No one was there to help us, or me.
Those who have been victimized by child sexual predators are frequently haunted by memories of these crimes well into their adulthood, often for the rest of their lives.
He was done, and I was crying, and Tiffany was consulting me, and she was, apologizing. She told me that she just never put me in that situation again. But he comes over mad because I was crying, and he said that I should be thankful that someone like Donald Trump took my virginity. He basically didn't say took my virginity. He said, I should be glad that someone like Donald Trump popped my cherry and not some pimply little 14-year-old.
But as an FBI special agent and the head of this office, I have the privilege to represent and stand among many who make it our mission to put predators behind bars where they belong, regardless of the predator's power, wealth, or perceived connections.
And I just was like, what if I said, what if I get pregnant? Not even talking to him, I didn't want to talk to him. I was talking to Tiffany. And he said, well, you'll get an abortion then, bitch, and then just walked away. I told Tiffany I needed to go home. I never went back again.
Your bravery might just empower others to speak out about crimes committed against them. It's important to remember there never was, nor will there be, an excuse for this kind of behavior.
And while the charged conduct is from a number of years ago, it is still profoundly important to the many alleged victims, now young women. They deserve their day in court.
If you have been victimized in any way, or if you are somebody who has any additional information about his alleged illegal behavior, we want to hear from you. Whatever age you are now, whatever age you were then, no matter where or when the incident or incidents took place. The number to call is 1-800-CALL-FBI.
In a 2002 interview with New York Magazine, Trump showered praise on Epstein, calling him a, quote, terrific guy, and saying he's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side.
He was a fixture in Palm Beach. I've met her numerous times over the years, especially since I lived in Palm Beach, and I guess they lived in Palm Beach. But I wish her well, whatever it is.
But as the president says now, he never liked Epstein.
I was not a fan of his, that I can tell you. I was not a fan of his.
Looks like a big fan of Epstein.
I feel like I saw Ghislaine Maxwell. I believe that's the reported recruiter for Jeffrey Epstein, and I thought she was in the background there.
We're going to get great ratings in your show.
No one was there to help us, or me.
I wanted people to understand the full scope of the outrageous and improper political interference by Trump's Justice Department in the cases of the Southern District of New York. I think a light has to be thrown on this kind of outrageous conduct that really corrupted the Department of Justice and turned it into a political instrument for the president. And Trump turned the department into his own personal law firm. He put in people who would do his bidding, and they would, target Trump's political enemies and assist Trump's friends. And it was a disgrace. It violated all the norms and traditions of the Department of Justice, which is supposed to be independent from politics. And quite frankly, it was frustrating because I couldn't tell the whole story, and the whole story needed to be told.
He says that Bill Barr and Jeffrey Rosen and Rich Donahue and Edward O'Callaghan all participated in these sustained, very improper efforts by the Justice Department to corrupt federal law enforcement and to corrupt the power of federal prosecution to help President Trump and respond to his whims and hurt his enemies. Berman also says he was removed from his office because something about his work as U.S. attorney threatened the re-election of the president in 2020. First of all, what was that?